After losing his job for helping a lost, elderly man, a young man is shocked by the arrival of a helicopter in his yard. Dear viewers, welcome to our channel. Subscribe to receive more stories every day. The sun was scorching, and it was already past noon. Lucas was working on his parents' small farm. The young 20-year-old worked 7 days a week because he needed to support his household. His father was already 60 years old and, due to a work accident, could no longer work and was fighting in court to receive disability retirement. However, months had passed, and there was no sign of approval. Lucas' mother was slightly younger, but her health was also deteriorating. For years, she had worked near hazardous materials in a local factory. However, the place was never inspected, and the employees had no means to protect their health. Several workers were left with serious health issues, and nothing was done about it. They didn't even receive compensation as the company declared bankruptcy and escaped liability. Lucas' mother was luckier and managed to retire, but the money was barely enough to buy her medication. With both his parents unable to work, young Lucas took full responsibility for supporting the household. He woke up at 3 in the morning to start working in the field and every day went to the market to sell the fruits and vegetables he grew. In the spare time he had, Lucas worked as a construction assistant whenever he was called. He never refused any work because he needed to secure his family's daily bread. Unfortunately, all this effort was still not enough to cover the household expenses, buy food, and pay for his mother's medication. Lucas was constantly worried and could barely sleep at night, with his problems haunting him like ghosts. He constantly thought about how to make more money to improve his situation. Lucas lived in a very remote area, with practically no houses nearby, so he had to walk a long way to reach the urban area and shop for household essentials. After a long walk, he arrived in the city and saw a flyer advertising job openings for the construction of a nearby shopping mall. Lucas was excited as he had experience in the field, but what excited him the most was the salary. Even though it wasn't much, it would help him significantly. He went to the employment agency that was hiring and applied. A few days later, Lucas was called. It was a moment of joy, even though it was only a temporary job. Lucas woke up early every day and was very responsible with his duties. But this attracted negative attention from some colleagues who didn't like it. They thought Lucas was trying to show off and be the perfect employee, but that wasn't the case. He simply wanted to make sure he wouldn't lose the job since it was his livelihood. Days went by, and one morning, Lucas was on his way to work. He walked through the field, illuminated only by the light of the moon and stars, trying to reach work early. As he walked, he saw a strange figure far off standing still. What is that? He thought. Suddenly, he realized it was a person moving very slowly. He felt both fear and curiosity. How could someone be here at this hour? There are no houses nearby, he wondered. Overcoming his fear, he decided to approach the figure. As he got closer, he saw that it was an elderly man. The man was well-dressed but had a vacant, worried look on his face. "Hello, are you all right? Do you need help?" Lucas asked. "I left home just now. I was playing with my 5-year-old granddaughter, but I don't know how I ended up here," the man replied. "What's your name?" Lucas asked. "My name is Alfred," the elderly man answered, with confusion and uncertainty in his voice. Lucas looked at the man's feet and saw that he was barefoot. His feet looked injured, as if he had been walking for a long time. As Lucas moved closer, Mr. Alfred showed signs of near collapse. The young man picked him up and took him home. At home, Lucas' parents were surprised. Although his mother was not pleased with him bringing a stranger home, even in need, she still tried to help the old man. Being in such a remote location, cell service was often unreliable. And right when they needed it, it wasn't working. Lucas stayed by Alfred's side until he recovered. The old man was weak from hunger and thirst. After a few hours, he started to feel better. Lucas tried to find out where he was from, but the elderly man was very confused. He kept saying he had been playing with his 5-year-old granddaughter, but couldn't remember anything else. Alongside him was a box of medicine with no label, so Lucas didn't administer it. Before he realized it, it was almost time for Lucas to clock in at work, and he hadn't even left home. He panicked and asked his parents to take care of Alfred. He ran as fast as he could, but his workplace was far away, and he knew he couldn't reach it on time or run the whole distance without stopping. Lucas ran and stopped to rest, but even so, he arrived 4 hours late. Many of the employees stared at him when he got there. Lucas wondered why, as nearly every day someone arrived late and nothing happened. To his surprise, he was called into the office, where he found his boss very irritated. "We lost an entire day of work because no one could start without you bringing the key. We had to call a locksmith to open the door to access the safety equipment," said his boss. Lucas was confused. He wasn't responsible for the key to the equipment storage. Moments later, his boss took him to his locker and asked him to open it. Inside was the key to the room where the safety equipment was kept. Lucas looked at his colleagues and finally understood. The person responsible for the key wasn't him, but one of the people who didn't like him. They, along with others, conspired to place the key in his locker, knowing he would be late. They all came together to blame him. Lucas had no way to prove his innocence, even though he was not guilty, and was fired for cause. Lucas left work devastated and walked home again. Upon arriving, he delivered the sad news of losing his job. His father consoled him, but his mother was very upset. Not about what they did to her son, but because you've always been a good person, and it's always hurt you because you wanted to help others. This wasn't the first time Lucas had suffered for helping someone, yet he had a big heart and couldn't stop empathizing with others. Days passed, and Lucas had to return to working in the fields and selling what he grew. His financial situation worsened, especially now that Alfred was staying with them. He called the police, who surprisingly did nothing. They said there was no record of the old man anywhere and simply left. Lucas couldn't leave Alfred on the streets, so he took him in. Having one more person to care for, his situation became even worse. A friend suggested that Lucas post a photo of Alfred on a missing persons website. He followed his friend's idea, though he didn't have much hope that anyone would respond. But a few weeks later, a woman contacted him. The woman asked for Lucas' address to come and see Alfred in person. His mother was upset. "How could you give our address to a stranger, son? You need to stop being so kind. This woman, or whoever it is, could harm you." Despite the warning, he still wanted to help the poor old man find his family and didn't think much about the consequences. The next day, Lucas was with Alfred outside, walking through the field when a very pretty woman approached them from a distance. When she got closer and could see Alfred's face more clearly, she ran toward him and hugged him tightly. "Grandpa, I missed you so much." Both Alfred and Lucas were confused because Alfred had said his granddaughter was only 5 years old, but the woman in front of him was 20. Her name was Isabella, and she was Alfred's granddaughter. She tried to talk to her grandfather, but Alfred was very confused and had no idea who she was. He remembered his granddaughter as a little girl, not a grown woman. Shortly after, everyone heard a noise from the sky. It was a helicopter flying over them and landing on a flat area near Lucas' house. A man in a suit and tie stepped out and walked toward Alfred. "Dad, it's been a long time," said the man in the suit. Lucas was stunned by what was happening. He never imagined that Alfred was so important. Isabella looked at the man and said, "Dad, how did you know we were here?" "I have my contacts, daughter," the man replied. Isabella's expression turned to anger, but she seemed to hold it back. "Let's go, Dad. You need to go home." Alfred and his son Leonardo walked to the helicopter, which took them away immediately. Alfred seemed more confused than ever and looked at Isabella and Lucas as he left. Isabella did not go with them and stayed there, standing with a worried look. "Something bad is going to happen again," Isabella said quietly, but Lucas managed to hear. "Is he going to be all right?" the young man asked. "I don't know," she replied. Isabella asked how he found her grandfather, and after he explained everything, she began to tell him who Alfred was. Alfred was a wealthy businessman, but years ago, he started showing signs of dementia and memory loss. One day, Isabella came home and couldn't find her grandfather. Hours passed, and he never showed up. She was worried and cried for help, but her father Leonardo, Alfred's son, seemed unconcerned about his father's disappearance. Days went by, and Isabella did everything she could to find her grandfather, while her father seemed happier than ever. Everything that was Alfred's now belonged to him, and the man didn't even care about his father's whereabouts. Days turned into months, and months into years. 6 years had passed since his disappearance. Isabella no longer lived with her father. In fact, She had no contact with him. She left home with just the clothes on her back and a little money to start a new life. She got a job at a school where she worked as a teacher. Isabella always suspected her father had something to do with her grandfather's fate, but couldn't prove it. Leonardo only cared about money and nothing else. His father's disappearance brought him only joy, and his daughter's distrust and distancing made no difference to him as long as he had wealth by his side. Isabella asked Lucas to tell her every detail of when he found her grandfather. The young woman said he must have been somewhere nearby. Lucas then showed her the medications that came with Alfred. Isabella recognized them. Alfred had been taking them before he disappeared. They were strong sedatives that her father used to keep her grandfather sedated all day without reacting. Putting the pieces together, Isabella asked if there was a nursing home nearby. Lucas said there was one, but it wasn't close. She asked him to go with her to the place. They walked a bit and reached her car. They drove to the nursing home and went inside. Isabella asked if there was any record of an elderly man named Alfred at the facility, but they said they couldn't give such information to strangers, only to relatives of residents. They were out of leads and completely in the dark, but as they left the nursing home, Isabella saw a man she hadn't seen in a long time. When Alfred started showing signs of mental decline, he hired someone to take care of him, and now that same person was working there. It was too much of a coincidence. Isabella and Lucas wanted to help Alfred, but didn't know how. Isabella dropped Lucas off at his house and said she would visit her grandfather to take care of him. Lucas and Isabella kept in touch, and she updated him on her grandfather's situation. Her father kept the old man practically sedated all the time. She wanted to do something, but her father had a lot of influence and money, so even the police couldn't help. Sometime later, she came up with an idea but would need Lucas' help. They went to Leonardo's mansion and confronted him. Isabella didn't have proof that her father had done anything to her grandfather, but pretended she did to get him out of there. They suspected that Leonardo paid the same caretaker from the nursing home to keep Alfred locked up there. They planned to tell him they had documents proving this, and if it were true, he would fall into the trap. The two confronted him face to face and said everything they had found. To their surprise, Leonardo didn't deny anything. He confessed everything. When his father started showing signs of memory loss, he used the opportunity to get rid of him, take over the companies, and all the money. He paid the caretaker to take Alfred to a distant town and leave him in a place where he couldn't leave. The caretaker worked at the nursing home near Lucas' house. For 6 years, Alfred stayed there, and over time, he even forgot who he was. But one day, the elderly man managed to escape and wandered for hours until Lucas found him. "I know you don't have proof, but I don't care. You can take him. I don't want to see him here. I don't need to hide him anymore because I already have enough power to stay untouchable," Leonardo said. "Take him and get out of here." Lucas and Isabella took Alfred out of there. Alfred moved in with his granddaughter, and although his memory wasn't what it used to be, he began to remember some things and recognize her as his granddaughter. Lucas often visited them, and this closeness sparked a romance between Isabella and Lucas. One day, the young couple was driving when they passed by the shopping mall under construction. The site was abandoned. "The company building this mall is my father's company. What could have happened?" Isabella wondered. From there, they went to Leonardo's office, but the place was empty, and the building was up for rent. Later, they learned the truth from the news. The company had gone bankrupt, and all of Leonardo's assets were seized to pay off debts. Isabella searched for her father, but couldn't find him. But that was Leonardo's intention. He now lived in a one-room house and worked frying burgers in a diner. Though it was an honest job, for a man who once had the world at his feet, it was something that brought him shame. He didn't want anyone to know where he was. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. If you like this story, please subscribe to our channel to receive more stories every day. Share with us what you think of this story.